Welcome, everyone, to episode number 2 of the DCAU Reviews Discuss This League. I am Liam, and joining me, as he always does, is Cal. Cal, it's our second episode of this Discuss This League bonus episode format, and we have another wonderful panel of guest stars to help us discuss. What else will we discuss? We're on the internet, after all, so we have to be talking about Zack Snyder's Justice League.
Yeah, I mean, we're probably technically a little bit behind with getting this episode out there. This would have been relevant like 6 weeks ago when it actually debuted. But hey, life happens, and we figured we'd still want to talk about it because we still think it's relevant. So, and as you said, if you're on the internet, you have to be talking about the Snyder Cut and all things Snyder Verse and the future of it. So we figured what better format to do that than in our Discuss This League format, where we have a roundtable discussion talking about just ideas and thoughts about screaming into the ether of the internet to figure out what our opinions of these topics are. So we do have an amazing group with us today. Excited to introduce them. First and foremost, from my virtual left, I suppose, we are excited to have on from the Pizza and Parsecs podcast. We actually were guests on their podcast just a few short weeks ago. They had us on, very kind to have us on to talk about Batman Mask of the Phantasm. So we are excited to return the favor and have them on. Welcome, Dave and Liv from Pizza and Parsecs. Dave and Liv, welcome to Discuss This League episode 2.
Hello.
Hey guys, thank you so much for having us, and the honor was ours.
Yes.
Loved geeking out with you guys about some Batman action, and excited to continue that with the Snyder Cut today.
That is right. And then also joining us, Liam, our co-friends, our compadres from the Podtower YouTube channel, and just the behemoth that is the Watchtower database on the YouTube. That's right. It is Mr. James Strecker. That's right. You may know him from starring in many of the Watchtower database's amazing YouTube videos. We call him our first two-time guest on the program. James, welcome to Discuss This League episode number 2.
Thank you. I don't know if you can hear the applause sound effect that I triggered just now. I don't think it's working. If it is, then okay. Oh, I don't think it did. Anyway, thank you.
Sound effect.
Can you hear it? I don't know.
A little bit.
Can you hear this one? It was a okay.
Yes,
okay. I can't hear the playback. Anyway, that's part of your show now. Hi. I like how
I'm a soundboard.
I like how I'm from the Podtower now, which is cool. Yeah, you should go subscribe to the Podtower. That's where all the DCAU review episodes are, or at least they will be whenever you guys decide to finish uploading them.
Yeah,
or finish.
we're on it
because I passed that on to you guys. I was like, I don't have enough time anymore. Well, I will say I want to talk about Mask of the Phantasm, so have me on to talk about Mask of the Phantasm. So I'll talk for days about Mask of the Phantasm.
He'll talk better about it too.
That's right.
No, don't say that.
Even though it's true. All right. As much as we would love to talk about DCAU stuff here today, we are technically talking about what the internet dubbed, even though it pains me to no end, it is not officially the DCEU. They came out and said a long time ago that's not what it's called. It's called Worlds of DC, but nobody calls it that. So we're talking about the Snyder Verse, aka the DCEU, which is just the worst name for a cinematic universe, in my opinion. It's the worst of them. I think even worse than whatever they tried to call the monster verse of, like, when they were trying to do the universal monster,
the dark universe.
Yeah, whatever they were calling that. It was like that, slightly above DCEU in my book. But So we're going to talk about the Snyder Verse today. Before we do, why don't you folks, I'll head it over to Dave and Liv real quick. You guys just want to give a brief synopsis, introduce yourselves, talk about what you guys do on the Pizza and Parsecs, and then we'll do the same with Mr. Strecker.
Definitely. And so we are Pizza and Parsecs. I'm Dave.
I'm Liv. Hi.
And we do a geek podcast talking about, your Batmans, your DCs, your Star Wars, your Harry Potters, that kind of stuff. We're just a bunch of nerds over here. Well, it's not uncommon for podcasts to have nerdy content right now. I feel like in 2020 they're a dime a dozen, and we're another one of those.
Yeah, I didn't know you were going to make me introduce myself again. I wasn't prepared.
Round 3 of introductions is coming next.
That's right. Next time it'll be written form. So I hope you brought a pencil and paper.
A paragraph. Yeah.
But no, that's we. Of course, as we mentioned, we were lucky enough to be guests on your guys' show recently, and had a great time. And you guys have a great dynamic as you have a great conversation about all varieties of pop culture and nerd culture on your show. So love that you guys are here. And then James, just in case a few folks don't know you. You are, of course, the proprietor of the Watchtower database YouTube channel, along with a few other guys. And as well as, of course, you're also on the Podtower YouTube channel with us.
Yes,
and
perhaps of more importance, the Podtower. Yeah. Yeah. No, you got it. I'm Watchtower database guy, one of 3. I listened to the last whatever this is called, Discuss This League, and there was the whole intro of like, yeah, I mean, Maddie's on here. Usually we have James, but he's not always cracked up to be, and all that kind of like. I always end up listening to podcasts in the shower. It's like the only time I have time to listen to them, and so I'm just standing there naked listening to you guys trash on me. I'm like, thank you, thanks so much. I have no way to defend myself in this situation. I can't even get to my phone and be like, are you kidding me? But it's all good. I understand. I usually am the go-to guy, and I'm honestly, it was fun to listen to a Watchtower database input on something that was not my own. But everyone listening to this today is not so lucky. Haha, sorry, you have to listen to James talk. But yeah, watch youtube.com/Watchtower database. That's me and us and you, kind of. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for being here. We're excited. Let's get to it. So we're going to do this in roundtable form. We're going to play ping pong back and forth here with the questions. I'll let Liam kick us off with the questions here for you guys. Feel free to talk as you please as Liam throws you the question.
All right. So starting off our panel, it's a pretty basic question, but it's pretty open-ended. So feel free to go as long as you would like with the answers. I'll start with Liv. We'll do ladies first. Just big picture. Did you like the Snyder Cut, and like what are the high points of this 4-hour behemoth of a film for you?
Yes, I loved the Snyder Cut. I watched it twice in 3 days, which I think it could be said that's a lot, but I don't see why anyone wouldn't want to watch it twice in 3 days. It was, I enjoyed it. And I think some of the high points for me were just the depth that we got to go into with all of the characters, and a little bit more backstory with Cyborg and Flash. I felt like everything kind of just flowed together really, really well in the storytelling aspect. And yeah, I didn't feel like it was 4 hours.
Well, that's quite a compliment for a movie that long. So, all right, we'll move over to Dave now. Dave, your big picture thoughts. Did you like it, and kind of what were the standout moments for you?
Did you also watch it twice in 3 days?
I watched it 3 times in 3 days, actually.
Wow.
I would have watched it 3 times, but I watched the theatrical version in between. So.
Ooh, I'm sorry.
We'll get to that. That's a question down the line.
It's a good thing.
Yeah, And to that point, right? Because we talk about the Snyder Cut right now. There's also the Whedon Cut out there, the theatrical cut. So I do love what we got with the Snyder Cut, but I'll put a caveat on that and say, but not at the expense of what we got with the Whedon Cut. Whedon Cut's far from perfect. Don't get me wrong, but I still feel like there are mirrors to it. My wife actually has a lot of really profound thoughts around that as well.
Talking me up.
But
Profound.
I feel like with the Snyder Cut, it really took its time to set up this incredible atmosphere and tone that really sets up the characters, gives you the time to really connect with our heroes, even with our villains too, right? You think about Darkseid and Steppenwolf, that family dynamic that they have going on there. You get to really dive into that desperation behind Steppenwolf. Incredible. I thought it was outstanding.
Awesome. And that will bring us to Mr. Strecker. James, big picture thoughts. What did you like about it? Did you like it at all?
Yeah, I was going to say, if you're listening to this podcast and you didn't like the Snyder Cut, you should probably just stop the podcast because we're just going to talk about how cool it is the whole time, which is fine. I'll also up top, whichever one of you DCAU review boys, because I can't see your faces, whichever one of you said it was the DCEU.
That was Cal.
Okay. I think the hardcore release the Snyder Cut peeps are gonna go get down your throat about how I'm pretty sure Snyder Verse and DCEU are not interchangeable descriptors. I think it's supposed to be DCEU is the like theatrical Justice League's continuity going forward, and then Snyder Verse is just the first three, Man of Steel, BBS, this one. But I digress.
I need a correction sound effect.
Correction speed run, yeah. Stuff you messed up right now. I really liked the movie overall. There was not. I didn't hate the theatrical when it came out. I do remember feeling disappointed that the tone was basically just the tone was such a big shift. But then it wasn't until we came out of the movie and there was some article within the next couple days even of like, here's everything that was supposed to be in the movie that you didn't get to see. There was going to be Green Lantern at the end. There was going to be Darkseid. There's going to be this and this and this. And I'm just reading it going like, oh my God, this would have been so much better. What the hell? Like, what did they do? Why did they do this? And just being mad, since November 20th, 2017 or whatever, what are they on, like 2 or 3 days after the movie came out. And so I was never in the, spam the release of Snyder Cut hashtag group or anything like that. But I was definitely in that like mindset of, oh, I really hope we get to see this someday. And so to finally get to see it was a great joy, because I wouldn't have thought that it would have happened this soon. I guess like I would have thought that, maybe we'll see it someday in like 20 years, there will be some sort of, special DVD release or your Blu-ray or whatever of the director's cut or something. And by that point, nobody will really care that much, but it'll be really cool to see. But the fact that, whatever societal internet norms are these days that allow these sorts of things to happen, and the whole situation with HBO Max and everything that allowed this to exist, I'm just really glad that I got to see it. And I think that that's probably a big influence on why I liked it so much, was just the, I don't know, excitement of getting to see all the differences, all the different editing choices, all that kind of stuff, the behind the scenes aspects of it. So I think if I hadn't have known, if this was the original version of the movie, if I hadn't known all this stuff that was going on, if I didn't have the comparison, I think I probably would like it a little less than I did. But I still really like the movie a lot, to the point. Yeah, I have seen it, I think 3 times since it came out, not in the span of like 2 days or whatever, but still, I have seen it several times already. And I think that says a lot about, I had not seen the theatrical cut since it came out in theaters because I was disappointed enough in it. And I agree that it's not like a broken movie. It's not a terrible movie, but it obviously, like, what it was supposed to be, I think, is a lot better. The end of James's segment.
Well, that's awesome. And that will bring us to our second question, and I'll have Cal answer that. We touched on it a little bit there, but I'll let Cal.
Yeah, hard not to.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the elephant in the room, because we know what we got, and then we saw what we could have had theoretically, and that'll lead into our second question here from Cal.
That's right. Before I get into that, just quick survey. Did any of you folks watch the black and white version of the Snyder Cut?
No.
No.
No. Okay.
I didn't know there's a black and white version.
Yeah,
I knew that there was one, but I thought
Justice
he
is
only
gray.
released it in some at like some special events. I didn't know that was even
I
available. To us.
fast forwarded to the Joker scene because there was like a rumor that the dialogue was different, and then it wasn't. And then he released a like different version of the scene on YouTube that it has like unfinished CG green screen background and has like one extra line from Joker. I'm like, okay, I guess I didn't really miss anything. So.
That's where the "This is a Society" line was lost to time forever.
We released the Society Cut.
That's right. All right.
A whole nother 4-hour
question
movie.
2.
Yeah.
Question 2 for you guys. We'll start with James this time.
Oh, boy.
So we talked a little bit about it, but you touched on it briefly. But specifically, doing the comparison between the two, the Whedon Cut, and now we have the Snyder Cut. What did you feel like the Snyder Cut did better? What did you feel like maybe was not as good? If there was anything that you felt like the Whedon Cut did better, what in the compare and contrast between the two? What did James find?
Dave touched on this a little bit with Steppenwolf. I think was the biggest enhancement of this for me. Like, I guess Cyborg is either a close second or Steppenwolf's a close second to Cyborg. But those are the two, the robot guys, the big shiny metal guys. Those are the two. Those are the two like greatly increased in quality aspects of the movie. I think. It's been a pretty unanimous all around. Like I watched this movie with a couple high school buddies of mine. We did a movie review on the Watchtower database channel. They had previously reviewed Batman v Superman and the theatrical Justice League with me. So I figured, even though nobody on Watchtower database knows who these two random dudes are, I'm just going to have them on for this because it makes sense. They really liked the movie. I really liked the movie. My parents really liked the movie. My father-in-law really liked the movie. Just all these people from different walks of life, different like reasons to watch it, or my father-in-law did not even realize what he was watching at first. Like he was like, I thought, haven't I seen this? This is okay, Batman has the big crab, and like I swear I've seen this movie. Like that just kept happening. He just kept like asking me questions the whole time, like what is this kind of a thing. I had to keep re-explaining it. But all these different people just really liked the movie, and I think that says a lot about how much more of a cohesive movie it is. Like that it's just enough lightheartedness compared to the just dour nightmare world of, no pun intended, I guess, of Batman v Superman. Not that I hate that movie either, but it's a very, it's real sad and stuff. And and the mandate of like, make this one happier, and then just going overboard as soon as they didn't have to do whatever Snyder wanted them to do, is very apparent in the theatrical cut. Like, just make it as light and happy and funny as possible. And when you watch this one, like, I've heard a bunch of different other reviewers say it, but I think the Snyder cut is actually funnier than the theatrical cut, and it's not even really trying to be funny. It just has jokes that actually play out well, I guess. They're not like forced, they're not cringy necessarily, all that kind of thing. But I think Steppenwolf is my go-to. Like, I keep rewatching his scenes. I keep all the different aspects of like making the multiple Skype calls to Desaad, like just saying do you have the third box? Not yet. Just constant all that stuff. Why did you call me then, asshole? Kind of stuff. Like, that was so much more than just I'm bad guy. Was like his entire thing in
right
in the theatrical. So obviously his physical design is way cooler. Also, what he was mostly originally supposed to look like. So yeah, I guess that's my go-to thing whenever people like, what's so much better about the Snyder Cut? It's the same movie, right? And like, no, Steppenwolf, you actually give a shit about who he is and why he's doing what he's doing. And then just the fact that, like, I don't know, he just has a purpose in the movie other than just to be bad guy. So I like it. The end again. I don't know how to end these segments. You do this so segmentedly, and I'm not used to this. I'm so used to talking.
You're used to a free-flowing conversation.
Yeah.
It's all good.
It's okay. I'll adapt.
All right, same question for Dave and Liv, and whoever wants to go first, you can choose. But same question between the two cuts of the movie, assuming that you have seen both versions. Actually, I know that you've seen both versions because Liv mentioned that she watched it in between. But
you got to hear these profound thoughts that Liv has.
Oh my gosh!
So let's hear the profound thoughts and the and what you guys think as far as the differences between the two. What was good, what was not.
I'm gonna let you go first, as long as you don't steal my notes.
No. I'll let you have your profound thoughts because those are definitely yours.
Thank you. You can't tell if that was a compliment or not.
It was. It was.
The build up to Liv's thoughts keeps growing. I can't wait.
Watch the people all like, yeah.
I liked it.
Okay.
Yeah, we call that Chekhov's Liv's thoughts.
We
introduced it in the first act.
Yeah, you have to bring it back.
Well, I think the one thing that I'll say is with the Snyder Cut, I really felt like it was such a deeply personal movie to Zach. You really sort of feel that, and I experienced that a lot with Cyborg. James just talked a little bit about what we get with Cyborg here, and his entire storyline ending with when he's in the mother boxes and he has that dialogue, and ending with I am not broken, I'm not alone. And it just sort of gives me chills to see that on the screen and understanding the experience of what happened in Snyder's family with Autumn at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And then you also get that with some other subtle things like the ad for the AFSP, the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. Mm-hmm. You see that big ad as they're driving off in their fancy pants Mercedes.
Their fancy pants Mercedes.
Yeah.
Bruce's fancy pants Mercedes.
Bruce's fancy pants.
Barry couldn't afford that.
Barry did not co-sign for that.
He brought the pizza. Bruce brought the Parsecs.
I like that.
That's my kind of movie right there.
But in all seriousness, there's those, I guess I would call it like an atmospheric nuance that just sort of makes it a lot more personal, given what we know about the story of Snyder's family there. I can't not talk about Steppenwolf and piggyback on what James was saying here. For me, one of the biggest things was his appearance, obviously. Just a very striking character, particularly in his eyes. I felt like you got a lot more expression out of them. And then you really get to see his desperation in trying to obtain the approval of Darkseid and get back to his home. It really sort of gives you that sympathetic villain that you can attached to a little bit. I mean, he's a bad guy, obviously. You're not like rooting for him, but you're kind of rooting for him at the same time. And then you get to experience that grind. Like James made the joke about him Skyping Desaad. Like, you get that other mother box? Not yet.
Sorry.
But you get to see that grind. And one thing in the Whedon cut is I feel like he was just bebopping boom tube to boom tube, grabbing the mother boxes, and then, going back to this to this home base here. You really get to experience like his sort of detective work and getting to see what the parademons are actually investigating and stuff like that, which I really appreciated. And the one thing that I can't not talk about with Steppenwolf is his armor, his shiny armor, that reflective armor. And I feel like reflective sort of works on two levels. Obviously, yes, it's shiny. It looks pretty. ADD folks everywhere are like, yes, something for me. But I also feel like it's reflective of his emotions. It's almost an extension of his emotions. Like you see when he's talking to Desaad, this guy that he's really trying to get the approval of through Darkseid, of course. But you see Steppenwolf's armor, and he has no spikes at that point. It's sort of like a little bit more of a vulnerable position for him. And then you see him when Darkseid actually shows up, like he strips himself of the armor, becoming in his most vulnerable state. Like he doesn't have that physical and almost emotional armor around Darkseid. There's that vulnerability that you really get to experience with him, and I love that. And then you contrast that with when he's in battle with the League, and he becomes all prickly again. Like I really loved how reactive it was to the situations that Steppenwolf was in. Loved that.
Love
and then
that.
The last point that I want to make, and I don't know how y'all felt about it, but there's some like atmospheric settings that I felt like worked really, really well. The one scene that I really loved, and some people would say that it's not necessary at all, but the singing scene with Aquaman going back into the ocean. On first watch, it's silly, right? She's getting a whiff of his cutter, and then Aquaman slow-mos into the ocean. But it really drives the point home of how the citizens of this little fishing community view Aquaman in almost this sort of messianic, almost like a god. And I kind of harken it back to how people might have reacted with like a Jesus type character,
For sure.
and the garments that he would have worn. And you really see that when she's taking that, and then they sing in unison, almost in like exaltation and celebration of this guy that comes in and is the protector of their village. Like little things like that, I think just really amplified a lot of meaning in the Snyder Cut.
And especially comparing that to Aquaman's exit in that same scene in the theatrical, where they do a very awkward, very obvious green
He like
screen
jumps backwards
shot where he like uncomfortably backward falls into the water. Just all this like that was one of a handful of times where one of my buddies watching the movie with me, just that was so much better. Oh my god, like why would they change that kind of a thing? Yeah.
It's awesome. I like that.
Yeah, I definitely think that's like a hallmark of the three Snyder movies, is that he wanted his superhero characters. I think you could even see that in Watchmen. Like they are not meant to be necessarily like you and I. Like they are he very clearly views them as like modern myths, modern, Greek gods. So yeah, I think that's definitely what he was going for there.
All right, so it's the main event.
Great.
We've been waiting, bated breath.
So when I first watched the Snyder Cut, I made it a point to, after watching it once, I went back and watched the theatrical cut, Whedon's version. And then I went back again and watched Snyder's version. And I found that doing that gave me a different perspective on Whedon's movie.
Really?
I was not a part of the I hated that movie because it sucked. I actually enjoyed it. I was too disappointed in some of the decisions made, but I also understood at the time the situation that was going on and why we got this version and not the version that we had originally been anticipating. And there was a lot of really nice things about Whedon's version that complemented Snyder's version and vice versa. For example, we can talk about Aquaman. I sat there and watched Snyder's version, and it had been a minute since I've seen the theatrical version of this movie. And I looked over at David at one point and I was like, when did Aquaman get a suit? I don't remember him going and getting a suit. I missed something here. But then when I watched the theatrical version, we had this entire dialogue of Aquaman telling his sister, I actually need to borrow the suit. He has a conversation. So I see where Snyder didn't necessarily need that anymore because that had already been set up in the theatrical version. So for me, these movies are so complementary because you can watch one and it makes the other a little bit more easily digestible, or you can watch one and it makes the other one make more sense. We also get this really cool dynamic shift in the theatrical version with Cyborg. In Whedon's version, we see Victor struggling being a cyborg, being a machine. Whereas in Snyder's version, we get to see this machine struggle being a hero and being somebody who works with others and being, kind of more of the human aspect of being a hero. Both great narratives, both great different versions of a story. They work together because we can kind of sit back and say, okay, I've seen Cyborg struggle with being a robot, and now I get to see Cyborg struggle being the superhero Cyborg, which works hand in hand with each other. I think that giving these two movies a label of this one sucked, this one was good, this one was horrible, this one was fantastic, insert whatever version you want underneath those, but I think most DC fans are going to lean one way or another. I think it does an injustice to sit there and say, well, the Whedon version was bad. Well, the Whedon version wasn't bad. It was actually a really cool skeleton of what the Snyder Cut was. I think if I hadn't watched the Whedon version, it would have made the Snyder Cut harder to digest because it was 4 hours. There's so much in there that I would have been lost after hour 2. But instead, I already knew the bones of this movie. I already knew what we were kind of diving into, and I got to pay more attention to the bigger pictures that Snyder kind of gave us throughout the entire 4-hour movie. And I got to enjoy the epilogue and the place that kind of puts us. I got to enjoy each part and the places that put us. I got to enjoy because I've heard a lot of people say oh, well, Barry's little dog interview run around with hot dogs was boring and kind of pointless. But I got to enjoy that because it was a nice little breather from this darker movie, but it was also this really fun backstory on really giving me that idea of Barry is hard at work to get his father free. So there's my less than profound opinion.
Well, I actually kind of agree with the hand-in-handness of the two movies, because I think maybe there's some stuff in the Snyder Cut. Okay. When I watched the Snyder Cut with my friends, we watched the theatrical again the day before because I figured it would be the best way to compare the two. And there were a lot of moments in the Whedon version where something would happen and we would go, why did that happen? How did this person get to this place? How did this thing, like there was the whole scene, which is not the opening scene in the theatrical, but Batman going to the Aquaman town and, standing there talking to the fisher folk and all this stuff. And he said, one of my friends was the whole time that scene is happening, they're like, Bruce Wayne, he has access to airplanes and boats, and why did he ride a horse here, kind of a thing. and then in the Snyder cut, they actually take a couple minutes to be like, but no ships have come in for days, the weather has been too bad and all this stuff, and we're like, oh, okay, thank you. But then on the other side of that coin are moments like the end of the first big Steppenwolf battle in the sewer place. They're climbing up the wall on the Nightcrawler and the water's rising, and in the theatrical, Cyborg realizes he needs to go grab the mother box from his house, from his closet, his dirty closet, and just blasts out of the Nightcrawler, and you hear like an 80-yard line of the Flash going like, did he just bail? Like, did he just leave? The kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. And that's not in the Snyder cut. The beat is exactly the same, but there's no little joke there. And that was actually something that I thought in the moment of the Snyder version of like, did he just left? What? And I thought like, right. Okay, I could see those being times where whoever's editing the theatrical version, they're told like, you have to get this down to 2 hours. You have to, blah, 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 to get to that point and be like, okay, we probably need to add some little line here because that kind of doesn't make any sense. Why would he do that kind of a thing? And at least adding in that joke makes it, you kind of relate to Flash in that moment, go like, yeah, why did he just leave? What the heck, kind of a thing. That never felt like an added in line or anything weird like that to me. I think the problems with trying to condense the movie and still use as much original footage as possible come in the forms of the best example that I've been using talking to people is the "you smell good" line, which is a very strange series of editing choices that led to that line, because in the I'll say original, when I'm talking about Snyder, I guess the original scene is of Superman coming back to life, and he's fighting the Justice League, and he doesn't say a single word that entire time that he's fighting them. And then they fly off to Kansas, they land, Superman says, "This is home." And then Lois Lane realizes that's the first time he's said something since he's come back, and she turns to him and says, "You spoke." And then he says, "Did I not before?" And then in the theatrical, they had to add in that zany "do you bleed" line. He has to say a funny joke. Superman's got to do a "do you bleed?" He's like, "I know you, Batman. I got to talk to Batman." And so the context of him having not talked that whole time is completely erased. So then when we get to Kansas, in order to not just reshoot the entire scene, they just dub over "you spoke" with "you smell good." And then Superman still says, "Did I not before?" And it's a completely different moment, and it's this very strange, bizarre, like, what am I listening to? What's going on? Yeah. And then you finally see what it was supposed to be and go, oh my God, that makes so much more sense. What in the world were they thinking, kind of a thing? But it's like, what else are you supposed to do? Like, how, you have to choose something that Lois can say that matches her lip flaps, essentially, like dubbing an anime or something. And so I just imagine the phone call to Amy Adams, like, yeah, we need you to come in and record a couple of lines. One of them is "you smell good." Can you really sell that for us? Like, it's just, I don't know. Those are the things that I hate about the theatrical. But I do agree that there are moments that are taking the Snyder version and actually like putting just enough of a little twist on it to be like, that makes more sense now. Then those things are, I think, missing a little bit from the Snyder cut. Things that I think the Snyder cut is supposed to be this like pure, this is exactly what I was going to do kind of a thing. and maybe the theatrical had enough time to sit there and nitpick that enough to go, some of this actually doesn't make sense. We need to fix a couple things. And now that we're back to this original version, some of those things are left unfixed, quote unquote, and are a little bit weird. But I just had to talk about the "you smell good" line because at some point, because I was just, it's so weird. Anyway,
right. So before we move on, I did, and this can kind of be whoever wants to jump in. I do have like a couple little amendments to this. There's two more things. One, none of you brought up the mustache.
Yeah.
For a reason.
What mustache?
We don't talk.
I
about
never
that.
saw a mustache.
Well, you can really see it, especially in that "do you bleed" moment that you talked about.
Yes.
but no. And then the actual real one is the scores are vastly different. They famously decided to replace Junkie XL and Hans Zimmer with Danny Elfman, who was a tremendous film scorer, but maybe I think you could almost say he cheated because he used the Batman 89 and John Williams Superman themes, which I like the moments in the Snyder or in the Whedon cut when those play. But did the soundtrack being restored, was that another part of why this worked so well?
This is a question just for James because we know how much James loves the soundtrack. Just kidding.
But no, anyone can jump in.
I just talked for half an hour. Yeah. Don't let me just talk forever. If you guys have thoughts, I do have thoughts on it, but if you have thoughts, say them. Yeah.
I mean, I personally appreciated both. I think the soundtrack for the theatrical version worked for the theatrical version. And I thought that the soundtrack for the Snyder Cut worked for the Snyder Cut. I feel like a lot of people had a hard time with the Ancient Lamentation that was played over and over and over again for Wonder Woman. But personally, I really liked it. I thought that kind of brought us back to the origin for the Amazons. One of my favorite aspects of the Snyder Cut was the extended part of the Amazon fight, because we see so much of Diana's like softness throughout the Wonder Woman 1984, throughout all of the movies she's in. She has that humanity aspect about her and not just that warrior aspect. And in this particular version, we actually finally get to see the Amazons have that soft, empathetic sadness when they lose one of their own or multiples of their own, especially from, I can never say her name.
Hippolyta.
That one. Especially from her. Like, we don't
You already knew who she was talking about.
I butcher it every time and it's embarrassing. But the fact that we got to see that from her was so nice. And I feel like in a lot of Wonder Woman's movies, we see a heavy aspect of Wonder Woman's empathy and sympathy and love for the people, but through her battles, we see her warrior spirit. But I feel like the ancient Lamentations brought that warrior aspect out of Wonder Woman that we haven't really got to see its fullness of until the Snyder Cut. So I liked it, whatever people have to say about it. But I loved the soundtrack. The differences personally come at me.
Nothing further to add, Your Honor. Yeah, I dug the soundtrack for sure.
He didn't have notes on that. He just agreed with me on his own.
That's really what's happening here.
He's not reclaiming his time this time.
I'm not reclaiming my time.
Oh.
What is it called? The filibuster. Yeah, that's what I'm about to do. I'm just no, I think, I do think that little stuff is a little much, but it was a really nice return to form after Wonder Woman 84. Like I think that there were a lot of things I didn't like about that movie, but I think that it was really nice to like, oh yeah, this is what things were like in 2017 with Wonder Woman. I remember kind of a thing. So that was good. I had a couple moments that I thought the soundtrack did better in the theatrical. One was when Flash tries to attack Superman at the monument and time slows down and you see Superman's eye turn and see him and then they fight. That whole bit, other than I actually kind of thought okay, of the two moments where they reused a 70s, 80s superhero theme, the Superman one being like a minor version of the Superman theme in that moment, the John Williams theme, that one worked okay. I think Batman standing on the roof and just hearing a blatant Michael Keaton Batman theme was kind of weird, like, but that's not this Batman. What are you what? Yeah. What is okay, weird choice, moving on. But the kind of twinkliness, I guess, of the Superman versus Flash thing, I think was better in Danny Elfman's version. The only other time that I thought that was when we first see Wonder Woman standing on the statue, and you in the theatrical you hear her, theme song, essentially, that whole thing, very like subtly coming in, like, oh, it's Wonder Woman, get ready. Versus in the Snyder one, you just hear the someone had referred to it as like Amazonian yodeling or something like that. And I was like, it's not that, but
I actually have a quote. Okay, like I'll even read it to you.
Oh yeah,
yodeling. Hurts my heart.
Definitely not that, but
I'm reclaiming my time.
I'm using someone else's words. These are not I mean, that was like a moment where, oh, the music, okay, this is going to be really different, because I right off the bat am just noticing that you're not playing the Wonder Woman theme here, but then of course you hear it pretty quickly after that when she's fighting them. But everything else, I think every single other moment of the movie was a lot better matched, like what I was looking at, I guess. Like it, obviously it fit in better with the Man of Steel, Hans Zimmer style stuff going on. I'm a big Battlestar Galactica fan, so I'm a sucker for taiko drums and big, bombastic, loud, angry sound effect kind of music. That sounds almost more like sound effects than it does music. So that kind of stuff going on in this, meshed with, oh, and I like these superheroes, I really like these characters, and I'm hearing this cool music, like that was great. Comparing it to the Danny Elfman stuff, is I agree that Danny Elfman is obviously a very good composer. He's very talented. He's done a lot of awesome stuff. His stuff that he is known for is just as memorable as any James Horner, John Williams, blah 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 kind of stuff. Even Hans Zimmer, if you want to throw him in there. But yeah, he just didn't seem suited for this, and it felt like a very last minute, what do people like? They liked the 80s Batman, get that guy kind of a deal. We really got to get people to like this movie. We got to try way too hard to get people to like this movie, kind of a thing. That I kind of almost feel bad for him, that he was given like a month and a half to write the entire score for the original, for Justice League. So it's not, I don't totally blame him for the music being kind of meh, because what are you supposed to do? But I definitely and there were some silly things with the Junkie XL stuff, but at the same time, he has to also write like 6 hours of music or something. Like the soundtrack is like 6 hours long, which I've also listened to a couple of times on its own. But like there's moments, like, I'm spoiling some of the better jokes from our review video, but where they're entering the sewer place to sneak up on Steppenwolf as he's interrogating scientists, and the music is just climbing the stairs, climbing up the stairs. That's what we were singing the whole time. It was just like, it's such an intense, like, oh yeah, here we go, and we're just lazily following Batman up some stairs. That was just kind of a good. Yeah, but overall much better, and much like I don't go to the original Justice League soundtrack. Like, this is one that I'm purposely listening to often, especially everyone's favorite track, the Flash Speed of Force track, when he's reversing time. That whole thing is a very, very that whole moment in the movie is another big why would you change this kind of a deal. But yeah, music good.
All right, from there we will begin to transfer into our third question. And that is, obviously, there's a Flash movie coming sometime next year that's going to involve alternate realities, and maybe we're going to meld some stuff. We're going to take a
I think
little
there's
bit
been a Flash movie coming next year since 2015 or something.
There sure has. But this one's filming currently, I believe.
Yes,
so
I feel more confident.
Yes, but yes. So that begs the question, and we'll start with Dave on this one. What, if any, sequels do you want to see? Do you want to see the going forward theatrically? Do you want them to treat the Snyder Cut as canon? Do you want Snyder Cut to have its own sequels in a separate universe? Or do we just let the Snyder Cut stand by itself? We leave everything in the Snyder Verse alone from here on out, and we just move forward with what we're going to do.
So this was a kind of a tough question because it's also taking into consideration how successful is this idea of the fans bringing the movie back to life, and can they get an entire universe of movies made as well. But so for me personally, what I would love to see is, sure, make it canon, but DC, considering we have this idea of a multiverse already, right?
Mm-hmm.
So sure, make it canon, but just as part of a different universe, and let the DCEU continue along the path that it's going down. But sure, let's see what happens next with Darkseid coming to Earth and wreaking havoc. Why is Batman teamed up with Joker and stuff like that? I would love to see that kind of stuff. But I wouldn't want to see the Snyderverse come to life at the expense of the direction that we're already seeing these going, with the Flash movie and it bringing the Keaton Batman back in there. I wouldn't want it to impact things like that. But I think as DC fans, we're no strangers to the idea of a multiverse. I think we have the capacity to sort of juggle between the two.
Mm-hmm.
One of the most frustrating things in I don't know, the last 20 years was when I was 10 years old and understood what a multiverse was. But I've heard for the last 22 years that people are too dumb to understand that there can be two versions of Batman happening at the same time.
Yeah. Or that the animated Ra's al Ghul is different than the Liam Neeson Ra's al Ghul in
we're too dumb to get
Batman
it,
Begins.
We're just too dumb. You can say we're too dumb. Agree with that.
and this is also coming from a part Star Wars podcast.
Right.
Exactly.
It doesn't get any more dogmatic than
can we make the Whedon Verse DCEU legends and move on?
Now we're talking.
All right, Liv, what do you got as far as what would you like to see in sequels? Would you like to see sequels at all?
Yeah, I mean, I think anyone who enjoyed the Snyder Cut would love to see that epilogue come to life. I would love to see what that section, how that kind of develops on its own. I mean, I will wait 20 years if I have to watch that, because I think that sets us up for such a really cool new series of movies that we could be getting. I too don't want the Whedon version to be thrown out. I would love for that to be its own universe. I think they can work well together as multi-universe movies, where they're very similar, very different. They can work in their own parallel kind of drive. I would also really love to see the DC just franchise pull from some of their animated movies. We've talked about this before, but I feel like they could really, really go really nicely into Dark Apocalypse from this Justice League. They could make that a live action movie. They could just say, hey, this is canon. We're just going to start juggling around with our animated things too. Hey, this goes next, because it feels like it could go next. It's a really cool. It kind of just leads us into it. It's really, really nice. So I would love to see sequels. Will we get them? I don't know. Maybe if we just scream loud enough. We got the Snyder Cut.
If we tweet hard enough, we will.
I would just like to say
everything we want.
I did not have Twitter until like last year. So I did not know that there was this whole campaign going on until we finally were getting the Snyder Cut. I was sitting here like, I just got Twitter for the first time ever. Hi.
Please tell us about how much better your life was before you had Twitter.
It was great, but I really love Twitter because I talk to a lot of cool people now. So
that's true.
We got to meet you guys. We get to geek out with you guys today about a bunch of DC stuff and Dark Side.
This would not happen today if it were not for the Twitter.
Well, let me make one thing really clear. I barely do anything on Twitter. Dave does everything on Twitter. So we would have met you because Dave got Twitter before I got Twitter. I don't do anything. I just pick on Cam Ray. That's about the extent of my Twitter action.
Big, awesome,
love it. All right, James, what are you looking to see when it comes to sequels, reboots, combining universes? What do you want out of this going forward?
I think my biggest fear is actually what Liv just said about Twitter stuff, where people will take this as getting this movie as a win to, like, obviously we can get what we want if we just spam everywhere what we want, and to an extent that is a reason why this movie got made, but there's 50 other unique circumstances that led to this being a possibility that are not, and the difference between having a movie that's like 90% done versus a movie that does not exist at all, like asking for, okay, I want to see the Nightmare World Justice League movie and all this stuff. Of course, I would love to see it. I don't think that it's going to happen. I'm going to eat my words in a couple of years, but I don't think it's going to happen unless something can get started on, unless, whatever level of Time Warner, AT&T, etc., green lights it like now. Because already even the final scene of Bruce Wayne talking to Jon Jones that was like an extra shoot is like, yeah, you're looking a little older there, Ben Affleck, than you did 5 years ago when you shot the original version of the movie. Like, I just barely tell. And so Liv talking about, like, even if I get to see it in 20 years, it's like, but everyone's going to be 20 years older. You know what I mean? Like, I do want to see it.
They made Mark Hamill look like
that's true.
Luke Skywalker.
Yeah.
So
they could maybe even take that as part of the plot and be like, yeah, we've lived in this terrible Superman is evil world for decades, kind of a thing.
That's true.
But I on the Watchtower database channel, we go into like super deep continuity dives on the DC animated stuff. So I'm not as up to speed on that level of understanding of these movies as I am of the cartoons. On a surface level, all I can think of in terms of like which Justice League do you count as canon would be, there's like one line in the Aquaman movie when Mira first, which by the way, Mira is not his sister. That was kind of a weird thing that I picked up on. It was like when you mentioned that, yeah.
Oh, I thought she was talking about Willem Dafoe.
Yeah. I'm not trying to say that as a mean correction thing. I'm trying to say as like I don't want to imagine the Aquaman movie with Mira as his sister, but anyway,
my bad.
But so there's some line when she like first picks him up to go, oh, you got to come help us do whatever Aquaman plot is. I don't remember. And someone mentions Steppenwolf. Someone says something about, oh, I just got done doing all this Steppenwolf crap. I can't do this thing, which is an applicable line, I think, to either version of the movie. So it wouldn't like mess anything up. I think there's probably some timeline related thing or other really small thing that I can't think of right now that would affect it. But in my head, you could say either version of Justice League, as is the real version, and then everything after that, Aquaman, Shazam, all that stuff, Birds of Prey, could keep going from there and be fine. But I will probably consider the Snyder version as like, if I'm going to watch Justice League, I'll watch this one if I had to choose, kind of a thing. If I only have a couple hours, I won't. I have no idea. I want to see the sequels, but I don't if they never happen, I won't be like extremely depressed about it. I'm not one of those people that considers like tie-in material any less interesting or canon or whatever than the movies. So like stuff like one of the most interesting aspects of the Snyder Verse lore to me is that whole prequel Man of Steel comic where Supergirl exists, and she's like that. There's a whole thing where her ship is the one that crashes in the ice in Man of Steel, and that's why there's like there's one of those pods, the like cryogenic sleep pods are open in Man of Steel, and that's because that was Supergirl's pod and she got out and she's out there somewhere, and that's a whole thing that's probably never going to be brought up again, but it's out there in a comic. And so because of that, I think that if they were gonna make Snyderverse sequels and they wanted to make them comic books or novels or something like that, that I think that would be just as what's the word I'm trying to think of, satisfying, I guess, to me personally. I don't think to a lot of people it would be. I think people would really want to see it on screen, and that's great. But if they had to do it as a comic or something, and you at least got to see what was going to happen, that kind of thing, that would be good enough for me, I think, if it came to that, I guess.
Awesome.
Yeah, to your point, they're currently working on sequels to Batman Returns,
right?
And
yeah.
I guess the Donner Superman film in comic book form with some really talented folks working on those. So yeah, there's definitely feels like there's a chance for it to continue on in some form or fashion going forward. But that will bring us to our final question, which I'll let Cal ask here. We kind of touched on it briefly, but go ahead and hit him with it, Cal.
All right, perfect. We did touch on it briefly, so I'll actually modify it, call a brief audible here, keep you guys on your toes for our last question here. So our last question was, do you think that we're going to see more fan campaign, Twitter-backed, crowdsourced, angry mob, whatever, however you want to describe it, demanding that movies get made? So that's part A of the question. Do you think we'll see more of those? And part B is, if you had any choice, any movie, any genre, any movie that you were demanding to get made, what would it be? So you were starting that. So we're going to start with James. We're going to go back in reverse order there.
Say again what part B was.
Part B is, if you are starting that, let's just say that you're starting a campaign. It could be for any movie ever. Geez. It could be a remake. It could be an alternate cut of a movie. It could be its own original.
I'm sitting here going, I don't know. And Dave just made a motion of like, I got it. I know what I'm going to say. And, I think actually I'll be quick about it. I think I'm pretty on board the JL reunion train on Twitter, but I think I brought it up on our podcast a couple of years ago. I wouldn't be surprised if no one remembers it. I have my idea for the like plot or whatever of a JL reunion would be to it doesn't have to take anything on the actual DCAU timeline or anything into consideration necessarily, but just have it be literally called Justice League Reunion, and have it be set however many years by the time the movie gets made that it's been since Justice League Unlimited ended, and have the characters have aged that amount of time and that kind of thing. So like maybe Batman is retired, maybe everyone else is kind of like got their own thing going on, or they're Wonder Woman maybe in exile, or some sort of dramatic stuff going on with everybody where they have to come together and do the thing again, and not have to like deal with whatever they have to. Okay, well, one last ride kind of thing. And so that kind of thing I would like to see. I think no matter what the Justice League Reunion movie ends up being, because I think it'll pretty doubtlessly happen, that there are going to be people that'll love it. There are people that'll be disappointed, whatever. That in my head is the best way to attack it, where you're not worried about like making it exactly the same as it used to be, the thing that people loved so much in 2005 and whatever. Like just do whatever's currently happening. The actors have aged, the characters have aged, the world has aged. Just do a movie. I don't care. But that's my that's the one that I want to hop on, but a very specific version of it that I want to hop on, I guess. And that's probably, I don't really have any other franchise that I care enough about to like get behind. I mean, I'd like to see more of these Snyder movies, but it's not something that, if, like I said, if it never happens or if it happens in a different medium or something, I will be okay with that. The fact that this one happened at all is very nice.
Awesome. All right, so Dave has an idea. So Liv, I'll go to you before I go to Dave. You like that twist?
So we got to get to the profound thoughts of Dave.
Yeah,
that's right. So Liv, do you have one that you would like to see made, that you would like have enough passion to get behind to start a Twitter campaign about?
Yeah, I do. I would like to see like more of these origin comic books come to life in movie form. Which one do I like the most? Batgirl. Sorry. I would like to see like Batgirl one come to life. I would like to see some lesser characters like Raven or Beast Boy, like from the Teen Titans. I'd like to see an origin kind of construction of a movie of some sort like that. I think those would be really cool. I could get behind those because I'm a huge Raven fan. I love her story. I love everything about her. So when she was in Dark Apocalypse, I was like, this is everything.
That's like a main character,
yeah. So I'd start a Twitter campaign for that. I'd actually get on Twitter for that. I would veer off my regularly scheduled picking on people and actually jump in on that.
Put on the hazmat suit and dive right into that toxic atmosphere.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's toxic.
I'm the president. It's fine.
It's good.
All right. Well, last but not least, let's bring it home, Dave. What about yourself?
So, I mean, look, I want to briefly go back to something that James said and say I can completely agree with. You know, were a lot of factors that made the Snyder Cut happen, and in some regard, I feel like what we got with the Snyder Cut was sort of almost a lightning in a bottle scenario. It's a lot of right place, right time things happening. You know, we're in the midst of a pandemic and they green light this as well. Having said that, you know, thinking about like, is this going to become a trend? We've seen this happen twice now within the last few years. The first of which was with the Sonic movie.
Right.
Oh yeah,
with the design of Sonic.
Still have yet to see that.
And then there was a second campaign started by me to try to get them to put the first design back. Didn't really take off as well.
I need to see that cut. Yeah.
Which, by the way, the redesign for that, the animators, they didn't get paid for redoing that, which is a super crappy move. But so the first instance was with Sonic, and then we get it again with the Snyder Cut. And I'm sitting here like, I'm thrilled that we got the Snyder Cut. I love what we got here. But to some degree, I feel like it's like a really sort of scary precedent that it might set. And I've got a quote from Dr. Drea Letamendi, who I think we know here from the Arkham sessions, right? Mm-hmm. And she says, what I have observed is an enduring false sense of ownership, which can manifest as abuse, threats, and strong, intense reactions when a story doesn't go their way. Fighting for the unseen cut of the film became a cause. In some quarters, the worst behavior metastasized. They're shouting and people are listening to them. Even if it's negative comments, they're getting positive reinforcement to continue down that path. So in that light, I think that it's the idea of a fan campaign. While it's cool, I think there are some implications that go along with that. So like for my own fan campaign, years ago, I was actually part of a fan campaign to bring back the Sarah Connor Chronicles on Fox.
Oh, nice.
I love that show.
Like I was part of, Save TSCC. Like I bought hundreds of stickers and would just randomly place them on street signs in the city.
You would. You would.
I was doing that. And I'm still sitting here like, what fan campaign? I would still do that. Like, I still want to see what happens in the Sarah Connor Chronicles. Like, that was such a great show.
Wow. Game of Thrones, what's her face chick?
Lena Headey.
Yeah, she's still rocking it. She can still do it.
Summer Glau, who awesome. Yeah.
You would.
Brian Austin Green.
That show is
Summer
better than
Glau.
the last 2 or 3 Terminator movies.
Well, I appreciate it. That's great. That's hilarious. Also, live with the commentary. The sick burn.
Was that, Dave? Was that your light bulb moment of? Oh,
Yes.
I got it. I know what I'll do. Okay.
Yes. That was my light bulb moment.
Tremendous. Well, thank you guys. We are so thankful that you guys came on here to spend the time today talking about the Snyder Cut and be part of the second edition of Discuss This League. We will now give proper time to plug all of your social media and podcast handles and websites and everything. Dave and Liv, will start with you guys because I know James, he will be talking for several minutes because he's just got so much stuff to plug today.
I never do that.
Well, again, we thank you guys so much
Thank
for
you.
having us. Very grateful to be here today, to be able to geek out with you guys. It's been a lot of fun. We have been Pizza and Parsecs. You can find us on pizzaandparsecs.com.
I was prepared to introduce myself again.
And I'm Liv.
And then it's over.
So yeah, pizzaandparsecs.com, where you can find links to all of the podcatchers, your iTunes, your Spotify's, things like that. We've got social medias, though we're mostly on Twitter at Pizza and Parsecs. And I'm Dave.
Wait, what? Oh, I'm exasperated.
That's
No,
quite
I'm
the
like-
name.
I'm getting confused. I don't understand what's going on.
Well, thank you guys for both coming on. Make sure you guys check them out, give them a listen. Just wonderful. 2 wonderful human beings, let alone just entertaining podcasts to listen to. So
Absolutely.
thank you guys for
Yeah, I
being
had fun meeting you guys.
You would.
Nice to meet you, man.
And so James, we now have 10 minutes of time for you to plug everything that you have, because you've got many pots on the stove and many what is it, something in the fire.
I know what you mean.
Fire,
Tires in the fire. No, that's
tires in the fire. No.
I've got many dumpster fires going on over here. I will say there was, I repeated some of the stuff I said in our movie review on today. I said some new stuff today. There were like 30 other things that came to mind. Every single sentence that anyone else but me said in this podcast would spark another like, oh yeah, and that thing about the Snyder Cut that I want to talk about, and then I would forget about it by the time. There's so much to talk about with this movie, and if we did like 6 more episodes of this exact same thing, I think I would still have more to talk about. It's a very unique turn of events that made this happen, and it's very interesting to me. But yeah, I'm at Watchtower Database, youtube.com/Watchtower Database. Everything else is at DCAU Watchtower: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Patreon, Twitch, Tumblr. No, that's something else. I don't remember.
MySpace around anymore?
MySpace. Yeah. Good question. Yeah,
you guys have Friendster?
Yeah, right. I'm on GeoCities. I did have a GeoCities at one point. Anyway, we put out weekly videos on DC animated universe topics, and occasionally, once in a blue moon, there'll be something else like the Snyder Cut review, etc. We just put out a very long video episode of our Will It Canon show on the Batman The Adventures Continue tie-in comic book that you should go check out, because I put an extremely long amount of time into it, a lot of work. There's a lot of not to toot my own horn, but there were a lot of YouTubers retweeting it that I have never interacted with, going, "What? Nobody told me we could make content this good," or something like that. So please go watch it. Even if you haven't read the comic, I do impressions of half a dozen other YouTubers that I had a lot of fun with. So that was a good one. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Thanks for having me on again and wading through all of my mouth dribble, my word vomit today. And I always look forward to guesting on these things because I literally just turn on the microphone and talk, and I don't have to do any of the editing, and it's fantastic. And I love it.
Isn't that nice?
Yeah, it puts me in a better mood, I think, when I don't know it. Oh God, and now I have to listen to all of this again, and I have to cut out the ums and all that stuff.
It's great.
You have to do that.
Well, lucky me. But but thank you guys for coming on. We're very grateful to have you on.
Absolutely.
Don't forget, you can subscribe to us also on your favorite podcast app for our regular episodes. We also are a part of the Podtower database along with Watchtower database. And the boys over at Tim Talk, who could not join us this time, but joined us on our previous edition of Discuss This League. So for this week, I think we're about wrapped up. Liam, anything else?
No, just definitely thank you to all our guests. Dave and Liv had done 2 podcasts on the Snyder Cut already, and James, as he mentioned,
I did listen to one of those, by the way. I'm not just brand new, but yeah.
and James, as he mentioned, had done his YouTube review. So we appreciate that you all would take the time after already spending a good deal of time and effort doing your own reviews to come on and be part of our overall Snyder Cut and DC films discussion. So yeah, just thank you to all of you wonderful, lovely people.
Absolutely. And until next time, I'm Cal.
And I'm Liam.
And we'll join you on the next episode of Discuss This League
and the DCAU review.
Bye-bye.
On the next Discuss This League.
And whatever music that you play in the outro that I don't remember.
We'll let it hang. We're just going to let it hang in dead silence for a couple seconds and then leave that in.